This is Mike Harrigan. I am coming to you live from the Braining Center headquarters. Hi, Steve. In Leesburg, Virginia. This is the first in a weekly series of live webinars called Brain Buzz, where we're going to talk about various health considerations related to the brain. And the first topic is working memory. I chose working memory for the first topic of the series because it is a critical skill in everyday life. There are a few functions of the brain, systems in the brain, that are involved in virtually everything we do and are critical to our daily lives. And working memory is absolutely one of those. So working memory is a critical function that is involved in everything we do, or most everything we do on a conscious level every day. Really, it's a determining factor in our intellectual abilities. It's linked to our IQ. It's actually linked to our aging and even our mental health. It plays a key role in every major decision that we make and every major calculation that we make. So let me just read something to you real quick and then we can decipher. So basically it says, working memory is a system for temporarily storing and managing the information required to carry out complex cognitive tasks such as learning, reasoning, and comprehension. Do you know what one of the most important skills for you to follow that sentence is? I think you guessed it, working memory. That's a rather long and complicated sentence. And what it requires you to do is to hear some information at the beginning of that sentence, hold on to it, and kind of incorporate it into information you got later on. Let me repeat the sentence again. Working memory is a system for temporarily storing and managing the information required to carry out complex cognitive tasks such as learning, reasoning, and comprehension. So what does that mean in layman's terms? Basically, it's getting information and holding on to it while you get more information so that you can put those two pieces together or multiple pieces together and make informed, reasonable decisions and calculations based on that. But it's more than just getting information and holding on to it. You also need to decide which information that you receive is relevant and which is not. So part of the whole process of working memory is getting the information. Another part of it is deciding, is something important or not? And then there's a third part where you either discard the unimportant information or you hold on to it because it is important and then you use it later on. So there's a lot going on, a lot of subsystems happening to make this all come together. Let me just read one more sentence to you, a technical sentence. Working memory is involved in the selection, integration, and termination of information processing functions, such as encoding, storing, and retrieving data. Pretty complicated sentence again, right? What does that mean? Basically, it's like your brain is a computer and it's getting all this information. It's processing the information. It has to decipher certain information. It actually has to encode certain parts of this information. It needs to decide whether it holds onto it or stores it. And it needs to decide whether it discards it or holds it and then retrieves it later and integrates it with other information. So let me just give you a quick example of something that would exercise your working memory. So I'm going to give you a series of letters, A, B, C. Now I'm going to repeat 3-digit series again. And if I say A, B, C again, you'll raise your hand. If I say a different series, you will not raise your hand. So I'm just going to go and keep repeating 3-digit series of letters, right? So I'm going to say A, B, C. You raise your hand because that's the series you're supposed to raise your hand to if I repeat it. Now I'm going to say B, E, T. You would not raise your hand. A, B, C. Raise your hand. A, B, C. Raise your hand. A, B, D. A, B, C. A, C, D. B, C, A. A, C, B. A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, E. So now if you were following along and you were raising your hand every time I said A, B, C, you did it right. If you were not raising your hand when the series was not A, B, C, you did it correct as well. What was going on while you're doing that is you were getting that information as it comes in. First of all, you had to hold on to what is the important series, and that's ABC. So you're holding on to that. Then you're also listening, as I said, these new subsequent series of letters. So anytime I said A, you realize that you had to continue to listen and hold on to that information to see if the next letter would be a B. If it was, you had to continue to hold on to that information to see if the last letter was a C. If it was, you raised your hand. At that point, you discarded all that information and waited for the next series. If instead the series started with A and then went to C, you discarded it right away and just waited for the next series to happen. So that is what's going on in your brain all the time. You're constantly, when you're getting information like this right now, you're constantly reading through and deciding, is that relevant? Do I hold on to it? If I do, how do I integrate it later? And that is a very, very complicated process and a very, very important process. So to give you some examples of things that we do every day that require the use of working memory, just daily tasks you wouldn't even be aware of, would be shopping. When you're going shopping and you have a grocery list and you're going through the aisles and you're saying, okay, well, that's not relevant. That is relevant. I'm on the right track. I'm not on the right track. That's constantly processing information, exercising your working memory as you're looking for the items that are on your list. Following a conversation like this one right now, following directions to a location, making a meal. You have to use your working memory to make a meal, reading a menu, even following, as I said, this conversation right now requires the use of your working memory. So working memory training is actually something you can do. It's actually something you can refine. You can actually hone your working memory skills. And that is a very, very important and a very, very satisfying and encouraging fact. So understanding that we can enhance our working memory, and also understanding that working memory is something that will diminish as we age. It is one of those skills that as we get older will start to diminish. So we can actually exercise those processes, those systems that are vital for working memory so that we can enhance them and prolong them and make them stronger. And we do that in our training, but this form of working memory training has been used for treating cognitive conditions like ADHD and other conditions, but also just for improving general intelligence for typical children and healthy adults. Some of the exercises that we do, if you've been to our class and you're familiar with our class, some of the types of exercises that we do that work on working memory are things in the Think Fast category. If you're familiar with the Power Braining training, we have a category called Think Fast. This is an area where you really have to get certain pieces of information visually and auditorily, because working memory is a process of analyzing that data that's coming in from multiple senses. And we will challenge the people to work on their processing of the auditory information and the processing of the visual information, and then deciding which is relevant and which is not. Think Fast is a really powerful technique that we use, or category of techniques that we use for doing that. We also do it, if you're familiar with our cardio-cog. Some of the cardio-cog exercises, you actually have to remember a series of movements, and you have to replicate those series of movements. Very, very important. And then there's another category of training that we do, which is called rapid reaction, which again is working your visual processing, your auditory processing, and your proprioceptive system, but it's giving you lots of data points coming in to your brain that you need to then process, analyze, and then either store, discard, and then combine with other information and make decisions with them. In this case, the decisions that you make are actual physical movements. You have to decide what movements you need to be making. So we find this to be a very powerful tool that's very helpful for not just building that auditory processing and the visual processing and the development of your proprioceptive system. All these are things that we'll talk about in other Brain Buzz sessions, but it's also very good for developing that working memory, that overall system of data processing that's part of the working memory system. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please type them in and let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has regarding this or any topic. If you happen to be a member of the Braining Center training, I'll happy to answer any question regarding the training itself, the class, the program, as well as this topic or other topics that have come up in conversation. Any questions, anybody? Let me hold on here for a minute. Okay, so I did have one question, and that is, are there going to be more, are we going to talk more about the ways that working memory, the other ways that we exercise working memory in other classes? Yes, we will. When we talk about the specific types of training that we do and that other people do, that we will also be talking about how that affects working memory. For an example, when we start talking about the Think Fast training and how Think Fast really works on your various processing speeds, we will also discuss the impact it has on your working memory. Other questions here, I see. Let's see. Okay, a question here. What causes working memory to diminish other than aging? Oh, well, that's a great question. And to be perfectly frank, we're everybody's still learning. We really an important fact to remember about the understanding of the brain in general is that we know a lot. The community finally embraced the concept of neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to change throughout life, only about 50 years ago. Since that time, there's been a lot of research in the field, and we have a lot of information. But as one brilliant man in the science world, probably one of the leading researchers in the world of neuroscience, put it, he said, if the race of understanding the brain is 10 miles long, we're about an inch into it. So as much as we know, there's a lot we don't. So what types of things will diminish working memory? Well, there are things like the erosion of the myelin around your axon. So on the wall here, you can actually see right here, if you can see it, that's a neuron right here, and this long white part is what we call an axon. So the way the information is sent around your brain from the way you make decisions, information, electrical impulse happens in the nucleus of a neuron. It comes down, sends that pulse down the axon where it releases a neurotransmitter, a chemical that then goes in and passes through this void called a synapse and is picked up by other neurons using dendrite, but picked up by other neurons, and then the process continues. They have an electric impulse and send it down the axon, etc. Well, that axon, this long cable, is covered with a protective sheath called myelin. And if that deteriorates, then the information that's getting sent is going to get interfered with, almost like an electrical wire in your wall. You have an electrical wire that sends, electricity down the wire, and it has a protective plastic coating around it. That's to keep it from bumping into other electrical wires and crossing the signals. Well, if that myelin deteriorates, just like if the plastic on a wire deteriorates, then the signals will start getting mixed up, and that would in fact affect working memory as well as many other things. There are other things, and what would cause the myelin to deteriorate? There's a lot of things that could do that as well. You really need to practice really healthy overall brain health. That includes solid nutrition, exercise, and brain challenges, as well as ample sleep. You need to get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. If you don't, then there's a lot of things that will help to deteriorate both the myelin, but also other functions of the brain that are vital, systems of the brain that are vital for working memory. Let me see another question here. What about hunger and sleep? Yeah, so we talked about that. Yeah, so lack of sleep will absolutely diminish working memory. Absolutely. Hunger, it might. It depends on if it's excessive or not. There are actually, I've seen mixed studies on this, to be perfectly frank. Proper nutrition is absolutely critical. There's no debate that proper nutrition is critical for a healthy brain. But the amount of food that you eat, that's kind of up to debate. In fact, most of the research I've seen lately is that you're better off and you function at a higher level often when you are hungry, when you are a little bit hungry, when you don't overeat. And that is something that's very interesting. But I think obviously prolonged hunger, excessive hunger, would lead to malnutrition and obviously a diminished working memory function. Any other questions that people might have about this topic, working memory, or other topics, other things that we do at the Braining Center, or other ways that you can enhance brain function in your daily life? Well, I will, if I don't see more questions, we'll wrap it up here soon, but I will leave you with one very important, somebody just, so Connie asked, she said they've been experimenting with changing the position in the class and asked if that would challenge us more. If I understand the question correctly, you're asking if people are located in different places in the room, would that create an additional challenge? And my speculation is yes. Anytime you make a change, it's going to challenge you. Anytime something is different than it was before, it's going to challenge you. And we want to do that. We want to do that as often as we can, as long as it doesn't obviously cause us to do something that would be dangerous. But if we can challenge ourselves in new ways, we want to do that all the time. And that's a core central focus of the Braining Center's entire program. But as an examples to that, yes, sitting, if you're in a classroom, don't sit in the exact same place every time. Sit in a different location. It gives you a different perspective, forces you to listen a little bit differently, to look at things a little bit differently. Every day, if you brush your teeth with your left, if you're right-handed, brush with your left hand. It's difficult to get used to, but it's a very, very helpful thing to do. It forces your brain to stay on its toes, so to speak, and to enhance itself. Walking up the stairs with your opposite foot. There's a number of things you can do to constantly challenge yourself. And yes, I think that would be one. Okay, how does written math enhance memory? Okay, so that is a great question. And we're actually going to spend a decent amount of time in a different day on that topic of the written math challenge, the rapid math challenge. But for those who are not familiar, the rapid math is a section of the training where we literally have you doing very simple mathematical equations, written mathematical equations as quickly as you can, and the focus is on speed and not accuracy. The primary purpose of it, well, there's a few, but one is to practice that basic skill of math and calculation, simple calculations, which is something that tends to diminish over time and is something that you should reinforce because it is critical in many things that you do every day. But what it is also doing is helping you to develop that connection between your conscious and your subconscious, which will be another topic of Brain Buzz down the road. But basically, a lot of what we're doing, a lot of the training that we're doing is to help to get some of the processes that we do in a daily life, some of the things the functions that we do, and get them to an automatic place. So we do a lot of things consciously and we do a lot of things subconsciously. And by practicing certain things, we're helping to develop the subconscious system to get this to be almost rote, not almost, but get it to be rote, to get it to be innate, to where we can just go and do it on a subconscious level, which will allow us to free up our conscious thinking. We can only think about so much at one time on a conscious level. We can do a lot of calculations on the subconscious level. So the more we can refine and enhance our ability to do easy math quickly and easily without even thinking of it consciously, the more we will be able to leave our brains or our conscious minds open to doing higher level calculations. So that's actually what people do when they are doing trigonometry or calculus or high level math. They are doing a lot of small mathematical equations. Well, just imagine if every time you did 4 plus 7, you had to sit there and on the stop for a minute, go and do 4 plus 7, right there. Okay, that's 11, and then go put that 11 in. Well, you've lost your train of thought for this higher level equation that you're doing. You can't do that. So really good mathematicians have the multiplication table and the addition table down pat, so that when they are thinking about something that's very complicated and requires a lot of steps and a lot of working memory, they don't have to waste a lot of their conscious bandwidth figuring out simple math. So it's a tool that we use to help to refine your ability to do quick, easy math, but also to help you to be able to submit that information to your subconscious, freeing up that conscious bandwidth, if that makes sense. I hope it does. If not, we'll delve into it more in a later session. I think I've answered all of the questions. I can't quite tell, but I believe that I've answered all of the questions from various people. As I said, I'll leave you with one quick thought, and that is to always, 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 always remember NEST: nutrition, exercise, sleep, and training your brain. Those are the 4 key pieces. And you really need to work on all 4 of those if you want to have comprehensive brain health, which will also give you physical health. If it helps your body, it helps your brain. If it helps your brain, it helps your body. Okay, so that'll wrap it up for today. I appreciate, again, your indulgence, and I appreciate your participation. I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 4 o'clock for the next Brain Buzz. Till then, this is Mike. Take care.